What's up, Reach High? I hope everybody's having a great morning so far. We are on Wednesday, so we're right in the middle of the week. I hope you had a great first week here so far. I hope you're going to have a great second week. Today, we're going to continue talking about Moses. So if you remember from our previous stories, God's done some great things through Moses. First, he told Moses, even though you're an ordinary man, I want to use you to do great things for me. And then after that, he used him to do great things. He saved his people from the Egyptians. He saved the Israelites from the Egyptians, and some crazy things happened within that story. But God saved his people. God knew what was best for his people. And so just like for them, that goes the same for us. But even though we know sometimes God has a great plan and God knows what's best, I feel like sometimes we get a little impatient waiting for him to do something. And so I want you to check out a story with Moses and the Israelites where this also happened. And maybe let's see if we can relate a little bit to it. So check this video out.
God's story, the Ten Commandments and the Golden Calf. So part of God's story is about one of the many times God forgave his family, and it begins like this. Remember how God chose Moses to lead his family out of slavery in Egypt? God wanted his family to be free and happy in the wonderful home he promised them, called Canaan. All they had to do was follow God home through the wilderness. The problem was, they kept disobeying God instead of following him. They kept trying to do things their own way. So one day, while the Israelites were on their way to Canaan, God told them what he expected from his family. Basically, how to treat each other, how to love God, and how to be part of his team. And with God on their side, the Israelites wouldn't need to worry about anything. This sounded pretty good, so Moses went up a mountain called Sinai to talk to God about it. There, God gave them 10 rules to live by, called 10 Commandments. Turns out, God had a lot more to say. He and Moses talked for 40 more days and nights. During that time, God's family got tired of waiting for their leader, so they asked Moses' brother Aaron to make them new gods to worship. But the very first commandment God had given Moses was, "You must not have any other god but me." Aaron and the people had just heard that. But Aaron wanted to make the people happy more than he wanted to make God happy. So he collected all their gold, melted it down, and turned it into a calf. That's a baby cow. They worshipped the calf and said, "These are the gods who brought us out of the land of Egypt." Well, God knew what was happening, and he told Moses to get back to the people. When Moses saw what they were doing, he was so angry that he smashed the 10 Commandments God had written for him on the ground. Then he burned the calf, ground it to powder, threw it into the water, and made the people drink it, because it's a big deal when we choose to disobey God. Finally, Moses turned to Aaron and asked what happened. Aaron said, "I threw their gold jewelry into the fire, and out came this calf." Even though the people disobeyed God, and even though they weren't all sorry for what they did, Moses begged God to forgive them. He reminded God how much he loved Israel. They were his special family. Of course, God did love them, and because Moses asked him to, God forgave them. See, God knew it would be impossible for his family to be perfect. That's why he sent them Moses, a leader who could show them how to follow God and remind God how much he loved his family. And for many years, God would continue to choose leaders, sometimes called prophets or judges or kings, who would tell God's family when they messed up and ask God to forgive them, because God loves to forgive. And that's a story of forgiveness. But that's not all there is. Later, God sent his perfect son, Jesus, to rescue the whole world. He did that by taking the punishment that we deserve. Now, everyone in the whole world can become part of God's family. And one day, we'll live with him in a perfect home, joyful and free, just like God planned all along. And that's a part of God's story.
All right, Reach High. So just like the Israelites, they'd forgotten all that God has done for them. And so they got impatient. They got tired of waiting for him to do something. So they started disobeying and doing whatever it is they wanted to do. See, this is exactly what God asks us not to do. He tells us to be patient and loving and wait with kindness. You see, I think we all kind of find ourselves in this season right now with what all's happening. We can't be at high point, so our whole worlds have been flipped upside down. And I feel like sometimes we can get impatient. But God tells us to be patient and to just trust him. You see, in this story, God gave Moses some commandments for his people to follow. Really what this was God knew that this would be the best way that people could live. He gave them 10 commandments. But in the New Testament, they're summed up as this: love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. And love everybody else as yourself. So just love God great and love people well. That's all God asks of us. That should be pretty easy, right? But sometimes, I know, it gets hard. We get frustrated, we get annoyed, all the things. But what's so cool about this story, and it relates to us, is that these Israelites, while Moses was up on the mountain, these Israelites disobeyed God. They did the exact things that God told them not to do. But did God stop loving them? No. Will God ever stop loving them? No. Will God ever stop loving you? No. God loves us from the very beginning to the very end, and it never stops. So we see God's love for us in this, that God loves to forgive us. But we have to trust that he knows what's best for us. So we should listen to him when he tells us what to do, don't you think? Yeah. So let's try to do that today. Let's listen for God and see what it is that he wants us to do and how he wants us to love others. So Reach High, thank you for joining us this morning. I hope your packet is going great. I'm hoping you're enjoying the videos. We'd love to hear from you if you have any prayer requests, so comment below. We love you. Bye.